Hello and welcome to this edition of Tips and Tricks. Now today I'm going to be talking about rod length and what rod length is best for pretty much everyday fishermen, because I don't know, in my thought, most fishermen, especially new to fishermen, they use too long of a rod most of the time for the situations they're fishing. Now I'm going to be breaking it down into 7 foot and above and sub 7 foot. It just seems like most fishermen today only fish rods that are 7 foot and above. And yeah, 7 foot and above rods are great. But in my mind and in my opinion, they're very situational, and there's only certain times that you should be using a rod that's 7 foot plus. But I see a lot of the YouTube channels and a lot of the newer YouTube channels, the ones that are, trying to be educational and trying to tell you how to fish. And I just keep saying that, your best all-around rod is like a 7.2 or a 7.3 medium heavy. 7 foot, 7 foot, 7 plus, it's always 7 plus, it seems like. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen anybody on the newer channels actually tell you and suggest a rod that's below 7 foot. Everything seems to be 7 plus. And like I said, 7 plus are great, but they have their purpose and their situation, and especially from shore and other places like that, I think you're actually better off with a sub 7 foot rod. And when I say sub 7 foot, I mean 7 foot to 6'6". I'm not talking about any rods that are below 6'6" right now, for the most part. There are actually some situations where rods smaller than 6'6" come in, but for the most part, I'm talking, when I say sub 7 foot, it's 6'6" to 7 foot. Okay, back to the 7 footers. Where and what situations would I, as the fisherman I am and the 40 years experience I have, use a rod that's 7 foot or above? Well, first off, swim baits, bigger swim baits. Obviously flipping, those are even bigger, usually like 7.6 or 8 foot. Deep diving crankbaits, big spinner baits, usually big spinner baits where you're covering open water. Slow rolling or dragging a jig, and usually again out in like deeper water, open water, or dragging a Carolina rig where you're just stuff, and where it's mostly you're dragging, and mostly with the plus 7 foot it's out in open water. And one of the reasons is most 7 foot and 7 plus rods are meant to be pushed, which means they're designed to be fished tip down. So they call it when it's pushed, is tip down. So most of those techniques I told you, big swim baits, deep diving crankbaits, slow rolled spinner baits, maybe even buzz baits when you're out in open water making long casts. Pretty much all the situations that I think 7 foot plus rods have their purpose and what they're actually designed for is when it's rod tip down and usually open water. Because, well, the fact is, the shorter the rod, the more accurate the rod is. I mean, that's just a proven fact. It's just the closer the tip of the rod is to your hand, the more manipulation you have it, the more accuracy you have with it, the more ability you have to manipulate the tip. So that's why a lot of these 7 foot rods are designed to be pushed, where they're just kind of held in place. Most of the action is coming from the bait you're using itself, not so much a lot of tip action. So that's pretty much my opinion of plus 7 foot and above rods and what their use is. Now for everything else, sub 7 foot are way better. They're way better for the action, they're way better for accuracy and casting, they're way better for manipulating and working the baits right. And well, let's just get into what I use 6'6" for. Or you can use, they have 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", but basically a sub 7 foot rod. You see me, I'm on shore all the time, especially shore fishermen. I don't carry a 7 foot rod with me. All mine are 6'6" when I'm fishing from shore. And well, a lot of it, not only because I think they're better for the baits I use when I'm on shore, but when you're on shore, a lot of times there's not much room, there's trees behind you, there's bushes behind you, there's all kinds of stuff behind you. And so that back cast with a bigger rod, you can have more odds of catching a tree or hitting something on the side and everything else. So just from a practical purpose, I think smaller rods are easier and better to use from shore, especially unless you're out in like some golf course pond or something like that where there's nothing around it. But majority of the time, if you're at lake or lakes and public waters and all that, you're usually around trees and there's things behind you. So shorter rod, a little bit easier to manipulate when you're casting in these areas with trees and overhanging and other stuff around. But the other thing, like I said, shorter rods are more accurate, and being able to manipulate the bait is a lot easier on rods that are sub 7 foot. Now I'm talking what these things shine at, sub 7 footers, is actually working a Texas rig, working a Senko, working a jig, working a creature bait. Anything that you're actually, manipulating, rod tip up, moving it on the bottom and giving it action is better off on a sub 7 foot rod. You're just able to cast better, especially, when you're around stuff like you're making accurate cast to a stump or something like that. The accuracy of sub 7 footers is so much easier and so much better that you're better off served. And when you're on a boat, it's kind of the same thing. Like I said, most 7 foot is out open water stuff. When you're in close to shore, around docks, cover, weeds, trees, all that stuff, a sub 7 foot is much, you can fight the fish better, you can control the fish, you can manipulate them through things better, everything with a rod that's less than 7 foot. And the other thing is, and a lot of people probably, I'll get some comments on this one, but topwater, and yes, even like frogs, for walking frogs and that, you're better off with a rod that's less than 7 foot long. They're very tip active baits, and to walk a dog, a spook or something right, and to manipulate a popper, and even, like I said, even a frog, the ability to work it is so much easier, and you can give it so much better action, everything, with a rod that is less than 7 foot. And again, the accuracy comes into play. If you're trying to put it right next to that stump, or right under the corner of a dock, or right on a little hole opening and weeds and that, sub 7 foot, 6'6", 6'8", 6'9", way more accurate. I mean, I have a story of that when I was at the FLW. I usually use a 6'6" on my drop shot. For some reason, I don't know, I hooked up to 7 foot. We were in close. There were a lot of docks, a lot of like dock openings and boat houses, and and I don't know, the whole day I'm like, damn, my accuracy is off. I kept missing, and I kept like screwing up, and I'm like, God, wow, usually I can cast this thing really accurate. But it was because I switched to a 7 foot instead of the 6.5, and so my accuracy was off a bit. So I kept hitting things and missing my mark and everything, and I couldn't figure it. And I'm like, oh, that's why that little 6 inches took away a lot of my accuracy in that. So yes, it's totally true. It's just physics. The closer the tip is to your hand, which is the lever, the more control you have on the tip. So yes, that's what I'm saying is most of your jigs, anything that you're working on the bottom and using the tip to give it the action, less than 7 foot. Like I said, 6'6", 6'8", 6'9", somewhere in that range, but sub 7 foot. And topwater. When you're on topwater, and even spinnerbaits and square bills and stuff like that, in close where you need to be accurate and there's a lot of structure and things you're trying to target and everything, sub 7 foot, shine. They're way, way better than something that's 7 plus. Yeah, I just had to, I mean, it's my opinion, but like I said, I have some experience, and I just noticed that a lot of the newer channels that are kind of getting big and kind of teaching people is everything they promote as far as your best all-around rod is always 7 plus. When there are a lot of situations, and a lot of times you might catch more fish and be able to work your bait better and everything with a sub 7 foot rod. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's gonna do it for this edition of Tips and Tricks. What I think about rod length and what you should be using to catch yourself probably a lot more fish and a lot bigger fish. So yeah, that's gonna do it. I hope this helps. Until next time.